The certainties of life, Joe. 0-0 against the top six and a happy hour on Tuesday.
Yeah, hello and welcome back to the United Happy Hour, the show where nobody is ever misheard and therefore there can be no controversy. How you doing, Paulie, mate? I hope you're all right. I think you hit the nail on the head there with your little introduction, mate, when you suggested that some of the certainties in life are a 0-0 against the top six side. And they used to say it was death, taxes and birth, I think, were the three certainties in life. But obviously, I think we can now add yours to that list. But yeah, look, to be honest with you, mate, I mean, since the last time we've done this show, United have been involved in probably a couple of dour 0-0s, but probably for different reasons. Obviously, the first one of those was obviously a second leg in a tie that was dead at Old Trafford, and obviously the game against Chelsea on Sunday. First of all, how are you, my friend, and what's your thoughts on those two games quickly?
I'm good. My thoughts early on are just not so much on the games, but watching that intro video. We haven't been doing this show for that long, or at least it doesn't seem like we've been doing it for that long. But the evolution of our hair throughout that intro video, that caught my eye.
I don't know what the situation is for you over in the States, Paulie, but over here, the hairdressers have been shut since the second lockdown began, which I think was just about January time. Obviously, some people timed an haircut perfectly just before the hairdressers closed. Some people went a bit early and then were probably due another one by the time that they just about closed and then couldn't. And then some of us have had offers off family and friends that we don't want them coming within 10 feet of us with a pair of scissors. So that's not an option either. I don't know what it's like for you over there, Paulie. Can you still get a haircut, or
you can now? I'm just not. Well, I cut the sides of my hair. My fiance does that, so we do it at home. But it is what it is. We'll take care of it soon. As for the games, you said it. 2-0 nils. Two different situations there. The first one, just a dead game. A bit of a stronger side than we would have thought, but we talked about that last Tuesday. Solskjaer doesn't want to lose this game. It's not just going to be like, hey, go out there and play, and if we lose 3-0, whatever. Injuries came out of nowhere. All of a sudden, Juan Mata, who had disappeared from the squad and was finally back, and we were excited for that, was suddenly gone again. And you wonder why Bruno Fernandes was playing, and it's because we didn't have any backups, and Solskjaer stayed true to how he brings and bleeds through youngsters, in that he really waits for them to be ready. He doesn't throw too much at them too quickly. If he doesn't feel they're ready, they're not going to play. He's certainly not going to play you out of position just to get you on the pitch, because that's not going to help your development. So if Donny van de Beek is hurt, Paul Pogba's hurt, Juan Mata's hurt, you really don't have anyone else to play in that number 10 role, unless you want to put Marcus Rashford there, but he needs a break too. So I thought he did it well, 45 minutes each. Sociedad started the game looking to get something, and United just shut it down constantly. So the only player on United that really looked like he wanted to score was Bruno Fernandes, who never really got out of first gear. So it didn't matter to me. I didn't think it was an issue. In the second half, it was 45 minutes of people just standing. So I didn't find any issue with how they played that. Oh, the fact that Rashford had to play 45 minutes prior to the Chelsea match, it was a nice gesture to give him the armband. 5 years to the day from his United debut. It shows how long how far he's come. So that was nice, and I didn't think it was a detriment in any way, shape, or form. Then we go to Chelsea and 0-0. In a vacuum, it's a good result. Away to Stamford Bridge. I mean, yes, we won there last year, and we won in the Carabao Cup there last year. So it's almost like we've gotten accustomed to winning at Stamford Bridge, that anything less would be a failure. But let's be honest, those are 2 wins in the first time in how long? We shouldn't take that. Winning at Stamford Bridge is not easy. A 0-0 is a good result. The attacking play from this team left a lot to be desired, again, as it has in every single game against the top 6 this year. But what choice did we have in this one? It's not, you could get mad at Solskjaer for jettisoning Paul Pogba out onto the wing against Manchester City and against Liverpool. And at the start of the Arsenal game, he did that. But Paul Pogba was hurt. So it's not like he had the choice of, I could play Paul Pogba today or I could play McTominay Fred. Matic and Fred maybe give you something more balanced in possession, but we just saw Matic and Fred play 3 games in the past 2 weeks, and defensively they're solid, but they don't offer anything more to the attack than Matic and McTominay do. So there's no evidence that we could point to and say, oh, this definitely would have been better. So what are you going to do? It makes me more annoyed about previous encounters with Big 6 teams where we were very conservative, but this one we didn't really have a choice, and in a vacuum, good result.
Yeah, it's tricky, isn't it, Paulie? Because I feel like the question marks have just started to come about Bruno and his form and obviously where he's at the moment, but they come at a time where Ollie's hands are really tied in terms of, well, how can he change it up, really? It's very difficult, isn't it? We obviously know that Donny's not fit, not that Donny would probably come in anyway because his form's not really showed that he warrants that, but like you say, Matta's been sort of conspicuous by his absence, and obviously other players that could play in that area have not really done it before. And this is why I felt it was a little bit unfair on Ollie last Thursday to sort of criticise him too much for the selection, Paulie, because look, to be honest with you, if you want any kind of intensity in the game, especially from an attacking point of view and defending from the front, you need to play Bruno in this current squad. He is one of the players that does that. And then people criticise that, obviously, okay, you took Bruno off at half-time, great, but oh no, you've got to replace him with another key player like Marcus Rashford because, yes, again, he's looking for that intensity to be matched. And they are the 2 players, I think, in the attacking third that can bring an intensity to United's play, to the pressing and like I say, defending from the front. And that's why you had to substitute like for like. It's frustrating for some fans, but sometimes you have to see beyond the obvious, don't you, Paulie?
Yeah, and he just didn't have any other options. And people got on him saying, oh, he talks so much about the youth and flooding in the youth, and then he doesn't actually back it up. He does. Yeah. He's been playing youth. He's been giving them their chances. Mason Greenwood, Brandon Williams. He's given them their chances, but it's when I think you're ready. And everybody always likes to point back at Sir Alex Ferguson, and obviously he's got a phenomenal record bringing players in through the youth academy. But people, somehow we've gotten this revisionist history now where it's anytime Fergie had a chance to, it almost is it's the League Cup, play the kids. Well, we're in the Europa League, play the kids. He didn't do that. If you look at his League Cup teams, playing the kids meant like Obertan and Bebe would get a start, and then Josh King would come off the bench. And you look at 2012.
It was more like playing the fringe players around the squad rather than playing League Cup. They happened to be young, didn't they?
The League Cup should basically be renamed after Ji-Sung Park. He was like the first, he was the one that was guaranteed to play in all those games. And Johnny Evans and, Darren Fletcher, those players are the ones that came into the team. And then later, Berbatov, when Danny Welbeck came through, he was the first choice striker and Berbatov was starting games. And that was when Chicharito would start. And you look at 2012, when United dropped into the Europa League in the midst of a very tight title race with City. And it's like, the Europa League would be a great time to play your kids and just focus on the title race, because back then, who did care about the Europa League? Absolutely nobody. And it was, I'm going to play Ryan Giggs and Phil Jones in midfield. I'm not going to play Paul Pogba. He's going to be on the bench. I'm going to play Ryan Giggs and Phil Jones. And you look at these squads and it's just, I'm just going to, he didn't play any kids there. He had some kids on the bench, and Solskjaer's doing the same thing. So yeah, he has to bring on Rashford, but that's because of injuries.
And this is a good point here, I think, from Alan. Let's not forget some of those more what you call senior young players. Actually, if they were still at the club, would be in front of people like Shura Tiere and even maybe Ahmed Diallo. They're out on loan, aren't they, Paulie? So
exactly. Our U23 team is already absurdly young.
Yeah.
That the more senior players who are only 19 and 20 aren't here right now.
Yeah.
These players are getting what they can handle. They need a season of U23 football before they're ready to jump up. Yeah, maybe you can put one on the bench, but now you've got COVID bubbles that you have to worry about, so that's more difficult. Hannibal Mejbri is injured as well. If you wanted to say maybe we could bring him on in the second half instead of Bruno, but he's hurt. So there really wasn't much to do. I think he's doing a fine job with the youth. I had no problem with how he handled it Thursday. I didn't think that affected this game. You could have played a random 11 Thursday, and I think this Sunday game still goes 0-0.
Yeah, guys, we've had a few questions coming already. I promise you we will get to them. We'll either get to them as we're talking about the topics that we got come up. I've noticed that a couple of them do relate to that. Also, a couple that we'll get to at the end if we don't get a chance to get to those. But Paulie, I think because we've got so much to talk about today, I think we should I think this is probably a record, Paulie, for getting to this. But let's get straight on to our first segment, which is what is on social media.
One of these days you'll get that right.
When will this blast work for me? I tell you, I'm tapping it furiously here. My finger ends are killing me, Paulie. I don't know why it's doing this to me. It just doesn't want me to. It doesn't want to work for me. But look, Paulie, what's going on social media? Where do we start? Obviously, and not like you said at the top of the show, another top six game, top six side played at the weekend. Another disappointing result in a lot of people's eyes, disappointing performance in a lot of people's eyes. But look, Paulie, it is another 0-0, as you've touched upon. It's 0-0 twice against Chelsea now, a 0-0 against Manchester City. There's been a 0-0 in there at Anfield against Liverpool. There's been a 0-0 at the Emirates against Tottenham. Interesting that Emirates against Arsenal, sorry, they won't appreciate me saying. It's interesting that a lot of people say about these top six teams, probably, because when you look at where these teams are at the moment, are they top six teams? I don't know. I mean, you've got Arsenal that are down in 10th and you've got Tottenham that are in 8th. But look, they're a traditional what we call top six side. You've done an article today, Paulie, that I urge everybody, and myself as well, to go and read after this show. Note to self, because I need to read it myself. But, it's an interesting take, I would imagine, Paulie, and I'll let you explain, because, like I say, partly because I haven't had a chance to read it yet. But, United playing conservatively, does it automatically mean parking the bus? Pressing higher, does that automatically mean being aggressive? It's about perception, I would imagine, is what you're trying to get across here. Is that right, Paulie?
Yeah, so the debate on the social media is the last 2 days, I guess, is people feeling rightfully that United were very conservative, that they weren't going for the win. And look, they took 2 shots in the box on Sunday. You can't tell me that, this was an attacking performance and they were being aggressive. It was bad. Then there's everybody else saying, well, look, they pressed really high up the pitch. They were pressing Chelsea very well, and they were very effective at it. They won the ball back in the final third 11 times. It's the most they've done in a game this season. So clearly they were going for it. Jamie Carragher last night on Monday Night Football talked about how bold they were off the ball. But that's ultimately it. United were bold off the ball. They were very conservative on the ball. And I think when you say conservative, I took a lot of heat for this. After the game, I tweeted that in the big games, Solskjaer has typically been Ole Gunnar Mourinho. And everybody, he's not sitting back, he's not parking the bus and everything. No, but he's playing conservative. Playing conservative doesn't necessarily mean parking the bus. He pressed very high against Chelsea, but when United won the ball back, they didn't do anything with it. And a lot of times they just passed backwards. And in possession, they've become very conservative. And how how is that? What's the best way to look at that is to how conservative they've been is how they use their fullbacks and how they use Luke Shaw in particular. Yeah. Luke Shaw, you mentioned this probably 5-10 minutes ago about Bruno Fernandes in the big games and how he's struggling to make his impact because they man mark.
Yeah.
And they take him out of the game. You need your secondary creators.
If you look at Chelsea's starting lineup, Paulie, on Sunday, for example, Kovacic and Kante, just look at that on paper to start with. Where is there ever going to be room for Bruno to do what he wants to do in the United final third? You can just see from the two names that were picked in that middle double pivot for Chelsea, it was just never going to happen, was it, Paulie?
And look, like I said, it's hard to blame Solskjaer for this because he didn't really have a choice. He had the injuries. If any manager deserves to be mad about, it's Thomas Tuchel, because you literally have all that talent and you put out a back three. Okay, you put Callum Hudson-Odoi out there. It's not like you played Reece James. You put out Hudson-Odoi, but then Kovacic, Kante, Giroud, Ziyech, and Mason Mount, who is he's a defensive attacking player. You know, if he's Jesse Lingard, he's a new Jesse Lingard. If Gareth Southgate wanted to play at the Euros exactly how he played at the last World Cup, Mason Mount would be taking Jesse Lingard's place. He does all that. He does all that dirty stuff very well, but that is a defensive ass 11. And you forget, okay, when United are in these big games, remember, United are second in the table, third in the table. Teams are worried about what they've done that by doing things well. Teams are worried about that too. As much as we're worried about Chelsea and what they can do, teams are worried about what United can do. And that is, they don't want Marcus Rashford running in behind. So they are playing this defensive formation to prevent you from counterattacking on them. And then United have to find something else. And we've seen this time and time again this season. Liverpool not pressing them as high, not leaving as much space. City playing very conservatively. Chelsea at Old Trafford. Arsenal both games. But when United win the ball back, they hold their fullbacks back. And that's killing them because, as we just said, you need your secondary creators besides Bruno because they are going to focus on locking Bruno down. Rashford's not a creator. Greenwood's not a creator. Dan James does a lot of things really well. What's the biggest knock on Dan James? No final ball. So he's probably not going to give you a final ball against Chelsea.
Yeah.
Who's your second best creator? This season, it's Luke Shaw. He's got the second most shot creating actions. He's got the second most goal creating action in the team. Look at how they use Luke Shaw against the top six, though. Obviously, the amount of touches he takes are going to be down because United have less of the ball. But if you look at the percent of his touches against the top six or against everybody else, he takes almost 43% of his touches come in the attacking third. Against the top six, only 33%. You look at how many carries he's obviously taking less carries because, again, we have less of the ball, but only 13% of his carries are progressive as opposed to 15.5 against everyone else. And he's not progressing as much. And it's showing you against everyone else, we use Luke Shaw as a builder to this attack. He takes the ball, brings it, helps us bring it to the final third. And we go from there. Against the top six, he's in a support role. It's once we get it and we've established we have possession there, then the fullbacks can now come up and support, and only then. And we only do that in about 5 to 10 minute bursts where we let our fullbacks get high. And guess what happened? In the first half, that's all of a sudden when we started getting some corner kicks and getting some chances. In the second half, that was how McTominay got his chance, was Luke Shaw barreled up the pitch. Against Liverpool, how did Bruno get the chance that he had to win the game? Luke Shaw barreled up the pitch. Against Arsenal, the two Cavani chances came from Luke Shaw and Aaron Wan-Bissaka coming up the pitch. But we do that in like 5-10 minute bursts. The rest of the game, we don't let them get forward. That is where the conservative is. That is where we...
Sorry, carry on, Paulie. Sorry. No, I was just going to say, do you think that's another reason why maybe Chelsea thought about a back five for the game on Sunday point? Because you look at Luke Shaw's creative output from the left, and he has been very good. And obviously, it just gives them some cover down that left sort of channel. Well, their right channel, our left channel, where Luke will try and underlap. Sometimes he'll do a bit of both. And also someone like Azpilicueta playing at right fullback as well, who is obviously, defensively very good. Do you think that was in their thinking or not?
No, they've been going back three for almost every game now. And I read somewhere it's possession coaches tend to start in a back three because it's easier to get the passing angles and everything and get everybody on board with that and get used to it. So I think next year you won't see them in a back three, but this is how Chelsea have been playing. So that's why they went with it. But this is where the conservatism comes from. Yeah. It's not United are sitting back in their own box and just looking to counter. It's when they have the ball. Look at the difference in their games against the Big Six last year and this year, and you look at how much possession they had and what the expected goals were. How much did they create? How much did they concede?
Yeah.
Notice two things here. What they conceded to get, the expected goals against, has gone way down this year. The possession has gone up, but their creativity, United's creativity, has gone down. They're using possession more as a defensive tool. It's very stale. They're not passing direct anymore. Everything's wide forward, then to the middle, and that's why they're not creating anything. And until he starts letting his fullbacks go forward, they're not going to create things. All their best chances against Liverpool, Arsenal, Chelsea have come when the fullbacks get forward because they're such a prominent part of this attack. And when he holds them back, it's very conservative and you're not going to win. But because he's doing that, the defense is protected. So everybody else also struggles to score. This isn't David De Gea versus Arsenal where we're keeping clean sheets because he's standing on his head. We're keeping clean sheets because we're getting two chances to score and we're not two half chances and we're not taking them. And our opponents are getting two half chances and they're not taking them.
Yeah.
So it's more of we won't lose because we're not conceding, but every time we play one of these Big Six teams we're just leaving it to maybe we can open it up and smash and grab at the end. And that's where the conservatism comes from, but it's also an indictment on the squad. If you send your fullbacks up, your midfielders have to cover for them. And then you're exposing your center backs. You have to send your fullbacks up because we don't have any creativity from the right, or, our secondary creator is a fullback. If you have a defensive midfielder, you can protect your back four while allowing your fullbacks to get higher. Everything comes from we're missing things in the squad and we have to adapt to them.
Paulie, I think, look, I agree with what you're saying, but I think whether we like it or we don't, whether you're Ollie in or you're Ollie out now, I think what we've seen this season with the games against the top six, we're coming to a point now where there's got to be an evolution, not only in the squad, but I think in Ollie's coaching and his tactics now moving forward to how we can become more effective and play these games. Because look, it's not just Chelsea doing this. I mean, Chelsea came to Old Trafford earlier on in the season when United were hopeless at home and were not in great form. And they were still very, very, very nervous about playing us. So there's no doubt United have got an aura back about them. Liverpool at Anfield, again, they weren't in great form, but when do you see Liverpool at Anfield maybe play as conservative as they did against United? Having said that, United were top of the league and on a great run. And even Manchester City, Paulie, who are now 12 points in front of United, when they came to Old Trafford a while back in the league, they played Fernandinho and Rodri in the middle from the start. This is Manchester City, who are obviously light years in front of everyone at the moment, playing unbelievable football and a run of 20 games of it. So no doubt United have got that aura back now. What Ollie needs to work out is how he can obviously cement that aura and turn these sort of ball draws now into wins, because the way he was getting wins against these big sides before, Paulie, was by picking them off on the counter attack.
This is exactly
do that anymore now.
This is exactly what the beginning of the article is about.
Yeah.
Last year, there has been progress because last year and 2 years ago, when Solskjaer first came in, They went to Tottenham at Wembley. They played a diamond. It was absorb pressure, hit them on the counter. They got that goal. And in the second half, they really just clung on for dear life. They went to the Emirates a few weeks later in the FA Cup, played a diamond. They clung on. It was denied. United took 5 shots that game, and they scored on 3 of them. Same thing at Stamford Bridge. And then the Liverpool match at Old Trafford, that was just pack that into the box. That was very much Mourinho. That was Mourinho ball and everything. Last year, it got more expansive. But what did he do? He went to a back 3 a lot. And it was still just, we're going to do things to deny you, not necessarily attack your weaknesses, not necessarily play to our strengths. It's deny you from scoring. And if we score a goal or 2 on the break, great. And we did enough to win. This year, he has stuck with his formation every game. And that's progress in and of itself, is that I don't have to change things around to face you. But this is, everybody wants to figure out how to judge progress with this. And everybody's got a different metric. Oh, we need to improve our league position. Well, they finished 3rd. So there's only so much you can improve there. So now we have to finish 2nd. Oh, we need to improve the points haul. Okay. The points haul is fair. The league position, we also know, happened because a lot of other teams were really bad. And we also know that we were top of the league at one point this year, but that's also because a lot of teams were really bad. And even as we got there, we were like, City are the real threat. And by the time we blinked, City had passed us.
Yeah.
Progress can be judged. When you want to look at how Solskjaer looks at his team, we know whatever he says, take with a grain of salt. His actions speak louder than words. After the Liverpool match in the FA Cup, he said, it was great that we played them on our terms and proved that we can win. Okay. Then you went to Arsenal and you put Pogba back on the wing. Yeah. It's an assessment. This is where you could see, this is how he assesses the squad. We aren't good enough yet.
I think progress has been made up here, Paulie, both in United sense. So the players now believe that they can win these games, or at least have a chance of winning these games by dominating possession, not necessarily sitting off and trying to counter. They believe that they can do it this way, but also the psychology of their opponents every game. Now, there's no doubt that other teams viewing us differently to how they were probably viewing us 12 months, 2 years ago. I just want to bring this comment up, Paulie, because a lot of people are mentioning this, and look, I just want to ask you about this quickly. Ollie's, a lot of people are suggesting that Ollie's playing like this now because of 6-1, and look, it's been an argument made a lot this season after the Tottenham game. But the question I want to pose to you, Paulie, is how long can we dine on that 6-1 being an excuse for United? We don't know. We don't know what Ollie's thinking is. If that is an excuse, and that's the reason why Ollie is playing like that, and there's probably a very good chance that is the reason. At what point do you have to say, in simple terms, Paulie, get over it, and let's move on?
I don't think he's playing like this game after game because of the 6-1. I think he would be doing that anyway. It's denied. I'm gonna stick with my formation, but I'm denying you what you're going to do best. And if that means that we suffer a little bit from what we do well, so be it. But we did learn something in that 6-1. I mean, it's hard to learn so much because that was a game with so many weird things. The red card a half hour into the game, the fact that everybody was out of form, Pogba was recovering from COVID. But you want to put Pogba in the middle, you need to have a defensive midfielder, and Nemanja Matic just isn't up. Nemanja Matic has played 3 games recently, and he's been brilliant in 2 of them and was not great in another. And in the 3 games before that, he was brilliant in 2 of them and really not good in the other. You don't know what you're going to get from him anymore. When he's good, he's unbelievable. When he's good, he makes the team so much better. When he's not good, it's awful. And if we don't have a defensive midfielder, so yes, excuse me, you tried Pogba McTominay against Liverpool, which I thought worked. But then you didn't try it against Arsenal. But either way, you can't do that now because Pogba's hurt. Yeah. But you can't put a more creative player there unless you have a defensive midfielder. And if Nemanja Matic, you can't rely on him. You don't have anybody else in the squad that can do that. So it's an honest assessment of the squad. We could talk about where we are in the league all day, but Solskjaer's looking over at his team and being like, I don't have a team good enough to go toe-to-toe with Chelsea or Liverpool or Manchester City yet. We still have work to do. And you take that knowledge in your head and say, okay, Solskjaer will never speak poorly about a person. Today he even spoke about Phil Jones, said, we're hoping to get him back. We're going to give him every chance. Yeah, okay. You look at what he's doing in all these games, he's not budging. It's because he knows my squad just isn't there yet. It's not good enough yet. So it's not just the big games, but it's if my squad isn't good enough to go toe-to-toe with Chelsea, like there's going to be games where they drop points where they shouldn't. That's the level that the squad is at.
Is Phil Jones going to come into the squad and have the impact that Alexis Sanchez is going to have when he comes back off loan, Paulie?
Sanchez isn't on loan anymore.
Well, but you know what I mean. Like, is he going to come? We were told that. One more question on this, Paulie, before we move on. I think this is the one that I want to get to you. Alan says here, after the restart last year, the interplay between Rashford, Martial, Bruno, Greenwood, in and around the box was fantastic, and they were easily breaking low blocks. Why not this season? Now, I'll just say quickly myself, Paulie, I think one thing you have to factor in after the restart last year is a lot of teams were at different stages in terms of being ready to play football again. And I think United were just one of those, I think they were one of the unfortunate teams who had got things right during the lockdown, obviously the way they would train everything, and they just seemed to hit the ground running. I saw them play games against lots of teams that we know can make it more difficult for United, but they probably just weren't quite there after the restart. So that's one of the factors, I think, why that interplay maybe was better or looked better. I don't know what you think on that, Paul. Have you got any thoughts?
Yeah, they had Matic and Pogba in the middle, and they were playing unbelievably. And Matic gave you so much protection at the back, which allowed Shaw to get forward, and Shaw took on a much more creative role. Because Rashford wasn't that great in Project Restart, remember. Martial was putting the ball in the net, though. They were creating chances and finishing them. And in the middle of the pitch, because Matic moves around and he gives Pogba all this space, Pogba was able to play really well. And Pogba was playing very simple, and he was just giving the ball to Bruno and letting Bruno do his thing. And they were finishing their chances. This season, they've swapped Cavani in there for Martial a bit, and Cavani is not really helpful against low blocks. He doesn't contribute to the build-up play the way that Martial does. Martial, when he's been in there, he's not finishing his chances. Everything's just been sort of out of whack. But it starts with, Martial, Greenwood, what have they combined for 5 goals this year? They're not scoring. So, and we're not creating as many chances because Shaw's getting up there and creating chances. We're just not finishing them.
The thing is, Paul, if you play against 2 big teams, or you play against 2 teams who play a low block, and both of them finish 0-0, one of them you create 10 big chances, the other one you create no big chances. At the end of the day, the result still says 0-0, Paulie, and people won't remember it in a while how many big chances you necessarily created. So 0-0 looks like 0-0. Sometimes,
but if you create 0 big chances and you get 3 half chances and score on all of them, it was a blowout. And it was like, no, if you play that game again and you do that again, you're probably not going to win.
And I think that's where United were after Project Restart, because off the top of my head, a lot of the goals that they scored were very good goals, and they were very well executed attacks, counter attacks that on another day you probably don't do, and like I said, the opposition don't give you space to. Paulie, I want to move on to the next thing that sort of dominated social media, and it's everything around the penalty shout, obviously, that went on at the weekend. Now, I don't know about you, but one of the things that annoys me most about being a Manchester United fan, especially the last year or so, is penalties, boy. I get in just the debate around penalties and the mocking and just the sheer, everyone seems to be obsessed about United and penalties. It's just really frustrating me. Now, first of all, Paulie, I'll give you the simple question. Penalty or no penalty for you on Sunday?
I didn't think so. And not only that, when it first of all, no one saw it live. You can't tell me that you saw that live. No United player even reacted when
I thought Greenwood was the guy who handled the ball. If I'm honest,
Chelsea reacted. No United player reacted. Then all of a sudden it stops and the ref is going over to the screen because they showed the replay where they showed Greenwood handling the ball, and then they show the ref going over to the screen, and we were like, what? Why? Like, does that mean that Hudson-Odoi might have touched this with his hand? And every person that I was with, we sat there laughing. We were like, why are they checking this? As we watched it over and over again, we're like, this isn't a penalty. It's not close to being a penalty. And then I was shocked when the game ended, and I take out my phone and I'm looking around. You look at the post game, and everybody's just bitching about this 11th minute penalty as if it cost them the game, as if United, look, if this happened in the 92nd minute, okay, but it's the 11th minute. You didn't get a penalty shot. Oh, well, you created nothing else the rest of the game. This wasn't the reason that they didn't win. But the virtual that people had, and Shaw's comments and everybody coming out being like, they're clearly against United and this is a conspiracy. The FA is against United. It's such an overreaction.
I think what doesn't help though, Paulie, it's the stats that are coming out, obviously, recently. Have you seen the ones that suggest that I think in the 25 games before Jurgen Klopp and Frank Lampard made a scene about United getting penalties, United had 11 penalties in those 25 games. Since they've spoken out and they've made a point of it, I think United have had something like 2 in 16. So I think one averages out at 1 every 204 minutes, and I think the other one's every 740 minutes. So read into that what you will. Again, I just think people are getting a little bit over.
Joe, you would know the reason why if you just read the damn articles. I wrote about this 2 weeks ago. It's really easy to see why we're getting less penalties. We carry the ball into the box less often. We pass the ball into the box less often. We cross the ball into the box more often. More of our touches in the box now are coming from Luke Shaw and Wan-Bissaka, who are not going to try to dribble around you. They're not going to win fouls. And less touches in the box are coming from Martial, Bruno, and Rashford, who win a lot of fouls. So if they're not getting the ball in the box and we're not running at defenders as much, we're not going to win penalties.
I've got to be honest with you guys. You know, it's been a hell of a long time since I left school because I am old now. But Paulie, it makes me feel like that teacher that I had back in my sort of exam year at school, where he would send me all the notes that I needed for the lecture, and I just hadn't have read them. And then when I didn't know an answer to a question in class, he'd say, well, if you read the stuff that I sent you, you'd know the answer to your questions, wouldn't you? And that's how you make me feel, Paul. It's a long time since I was at school, but that's where I'm at. But I just think I disagree with you slightly on the penalty shout. I do think it's a penalty, Paulie, and I think it's a penalty more because I think Hudson-Odoi has 2 goes at it. So there's the initial one where you see, obviously, I thought it was Greenwood's hand, but then when I've watched it again, there's almost like a little second swipe from Hudson-Odoi, almost to just sort of try and flick it a little bit away. But again, look, I don't really want to talk about that point. I want to talk now more about the comments of Luke Shaw after, and supposedly what had been said by the referee. Now, I don't know whether United have come out and denied all this because it's not a good look, or whether they
said just, Shaw misheard.
Yeah, and and we have to take that as word. Obviously, I do think there may be some protection of the referee as well, because obviously, if that was the case, Paulie, that is not, if the referee has said what Luke Shaw initially thought he'd heard, or Harry Maguire thought he heard, that is not a good look for the referee. Because, as I think the masterclass the other day, they were talking about this, and as they said, Paulie, the referee has to give a decision based on accuracy, not based on whether it's controversial or not. If it's a penalty, it's a penalty, whether a team like it or they don't. So, look, where do you stand on these comments?
I'm confused by the comments.
Yeah.
Okay, Shaw heard what he heard, but Shaw wasn't as close to the conversation as we think he was. I don't know if I have the thing right here that I could bring it up, but I guess I don't. Olivier Giroud is the closest person to this conversation. Fred is closer than Shaw is. And the referee is standing with his back to Shaw. So Shaw, the voice projection is going away from Shaw. So Shaw could hear what he hears. Wouldn't you talk to Maguire about that at halftime? And wouldn't Maguire clarify that? And if it is, then why wouldn't Maguire come out and say, when Shaw says that, why wouldn't Maguire back him up? That's odd to me. I do think that it's more than possible he could have misheard it, but things like that could have been said, or that he heard what he heard, but lacked the full context of it, in which case there's more. There is also this, I do believe there's a massive gray area here that the referee might have said that, but isn't necessarily wrong. So the fact that we're discussing this, okay, maybe it's a handball, maybe it's not. First of all, the biggest issue is that handballs have been applied very inconsistently all season. That's been a big issue.
Yeah, well, I think there's even been a law change halfway through the season as well, hasn't there, Paulie? To the point that now people are confused even more, aren't they?
Yes, that's exactly the point. So what is VAR there to do? Overturn clear and obvious errors. So you can look at something. Sometimes we get soft calls, soft decisions, and we say, he fouled him, but so I wouldn't overturn this. Like he gave the penalty, so I wouldn't say no penalty. But if he didn't give the penalty, I don't think it's a clear and obvious error and that he should then give it. Sometimes we have that situation with VAR where it's not a clear and obvious error and you just go with the decision that was made on the pitch. And that could have happened here. I didn't think it was a handball. Is his hand in an unnatural position? Yes, but he's jousting for position with Greenwood. He's not even looking at the ball. He gained no benefit from his hand making contact with the ball. If this happened outside the box, no one would be saying a thing.
Paulie, I want to just drag this comment up. The problem is that he ignored VAR. And I just don't think he can win, because I remember earlier on in the season, well, let's remember last season we used VAR. The referees never use those pitch side monitors. I would imagine on the whole season, I think I saw the referee probably go to the monitor twice. This season, in the first half of this season, if you look at this season in two halves so far, I feel like when the referees did go to the monitor, it was almost...
Once, it didn't get overturned.
So, and now they've almost gone full circle. And I think instead of the referees worrying about how this looks anymore, just call it as you see it. You know what I mean? And if they do that, Paulie, I don't have a problem with it. So if that referee's gone over to that monitor and he's looked at that again and been like, I'm sticking with what I thought. It's not handball. I'm happy with that. I'm not overturning it. I haven't got a problem with it. I have a problem with it if he's going over that monitor and as he's walking over to the monitor, he's thinking, right, I don't want everybody to think that because I'm going over to the monitor, this is a penalty. I want him to be making the decisions for the right reason.
Basically what they said was happening in the first half of the season. Because last year...
And this is the problem. So again, there's that pressure there.
It was different VAR rules. And basically they were saying, we're going to let the VAR handle that. The VAR is going to look at it and the VAR makes the decision. This year, the VAR is looking at it and he's saying, I think you should take another look at that. So at the first half of the season, it was basically like they were going over there with this thought in their mind of, well, the VAR thinks that I might have made a mistake and gotten it wrong. So therefore, you're almost going over there looking, where did I get it wrong? Or with this idea in your head, I got it wrong. And then it's confirmation bias. Oh, you're right, I got it wrong. And now, like you're saying, it looks more like I'm going to take another look at it and come to my defense. So I don't think he ignored the VAR, because the VAR is just the one who goes, hey, you should probably take another look at this. And it's just, there's a difference between ball to hand and hand to ball. And that's what the intention of the rule was. Now, remember at the beginning of the season, you touched on this before. At the beginning of the season, to make VAR to make VAR easier to implement, they essentially changed the rule and said, if the ball touches your hand, foul, penalty, no questions asked. We saw that soft call against Lindelof against Crystal Palace. We saw it in a couple of other games the first few weeks of the season. We saw it against Brighton. Maguire wins a penalty to win the game. We saw it with Dyer against West Ham. And it was so ridiculous to the point that you're right. at the end of September, they said, hey, we made new advisories to our referees and said, you should use more discretion, or be a little bit more lenient with the handballs. If it's ball to hand, that's different than hand to ball. And, it can be an inadvertent, etc. So if you want to argue about should they be changing the rules during, like, once the season is already started and we've already played some games with these rules, that's a fair argument. By all means, go for it. The fair way was probably play out the season with these ridiculous rules. It would probably be wonky. We'd hate it. It would be really annoying. And then next year you change the rules, but that's not what they did. They changed the rules. They are more lenient. And ultimately it's just, I didn't think it was a crazy handball, but I do think it was a situation where the referee could have said, yeah, had I given this penalty and I look at it now, there's not enough, I wouldn't overturn that decision, but because I didn't give the penalty, I shouldn't overturn the decision either, because it's not a clear and obvious error. Therefore, that's why if I overturn it, not if I give it, but if I overturn the decision, that's what's going to cause the commotion. And because of, to say that is totally fair. To say, and that could be what Shaw heard. So I think there's a gray area here that I think, look, at the end of the day, they're not punishing Shaw. So clearly what Shaw said is not defamatory. It's not made up, but I don't think that generally means that the referee is out to get him and screw them. I mean, look, again, this was in the 11th minute of the match. You had 80 minutes to come up with something. I understand that Chelsea would have had to open up if they were chasing a goal more, but there's 80 minutes left in this match. You took 2 shots from inside the box. That was your game plan. It's not like you changed your game plan because you didn't get a penalty. That was your game plan. You took 2 shots from inside the box. You took 11 shots with an expected goal of 0.4. That is not good enough. Like, the penalty did not come from United overwhelming Chelsea with pressure and causing a bad. The penalty was blind luck. That is not why you didn't win this match.
And I just want to say as well, people, like, I have to agree with you on this point. People that suggest obviously the penalty would have made the game 1-0, it would have changed the game. I get what people are saying. If it's 1-0, maybe that would have meant that Chelsea would have come out as a bit more. That may have left some more space for United. But what you can't forget as well is that 1-0 could have changed the game, not in favour of United. It could have made Chelsea come out.
United won a penalty. United won a penalty 40 seconds into the Tottenham match and went up 1-0. How'd that work out?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So I always think when people say, oh, well, if we had a penalty, we'd have won. It's very easy to say that. You don't know how the game would have panned out after that. But Paulie, I just want to say, this
is a great comment from NZ, because when I watched it back, I saw the same thing. My issue was also how the players were allowed to assemble around the referee reviewing the incident on VAR. There were 2 or 3 Chelsea players watching the replays and then reacting to that, being like, oh, come on, that's not you. You can't do that. And that's the thing, is when he came out of this, it was very confusing what the decision was. Nobody really understood what was going on. He went to the wrong end of the field, and then he was like, oh, drop ball. It was very confusing. And it was almost like he turned, when I watched it back, I was like, oh, he actually did right away signal no penalty. But he did it as if he turned around, saw 3 Chelsea players standing right on top of him, and basically said, no penalty. Like, that's what the decision is going to be. Now let me get back onto the field so I can really signal it and make the decision. And then he just forgot to signal it. But that's yes. Why are they allowed to stand there? There should be if you want to say the 2 captains can stand there, fine. But nobody else should be allowed to stand near there.
I think it's been made clear to referees that if they are surrounded by players, actually they should turn around and book players who do try and surround them and influence them. Look, I do want to caveat.
You're talking to somebody. You are talking to the VAR who is sitting in Stockley Park, who is getting this angle, who can say, hey, turn around. There's 2 players right behind you looking over your shoulder.
It's probably because the game was taking place in London. They probably thought that they could probably hear them anyway because they're not that too far away. That's probably what gave them the right to surround the referee. But Paulie, like I say, I do want to caveat that with the fact that Manchester United, especially in the late 90s, early noughties, were renowned for trying to surround referees and intimidate referees. So I do feel a bit sort of sat here now. There's that famous picture, isn't there, with Roy Keane screaming in the face, and I think he's got
both ways.
His teammates.
Yeah,
I think Cam's there as well, and it's very intimidating picture just looking at it, if you know the one that I'm talking about.
It's gamesmanship, and the best teams do that. And you remember, that's why Rafael got sent off against Bayern Munich, and that's probably why Nani got sent off against Real Madrid. That's what good teams do. But good teams also, what is every team that wins a title, every team that wins the Champions League, what do they all have in common? Luck. You get lucky somewhere down the line, but good teams create their own luck. And maybe it's unlucky. United got lucky that Hudson-Odoi, his hand touched the ball, but that's not the reason that they didn't win the game. Again, they did nothing. Good teams create their own luck. If United pelted 16 shots at Chelsea with an expected goals of about 1.6, and they were denied a penalty, and you could be like, damn, there's something here, but you didn't do anything in this game.
No,
you didn't deserve to win. You played well enough that with 3 minutes to go, you had a chance to steal it, but you didn't. At the end of the day, the result was fair. If you play that game over and over again, if you play that game 10 times, remember, Chelsea actually had a chance in about 35 minutes in the game where they put the ball on Giroud's forehead. That is exactly what you want to do with Olivier Giroud. They put it on his forehead in the 6-yard box, and he missed. You play this game over and over again, play it 10 times, you're going to draw close to half of them. You're going to draw it 3 or 4 times. Chelsea are going to win it way more than United are.
Yeah, Paulie, before we finish on this and move on to our final point of what's on social media, I think the perfect example was when Manchester City played Chelsea at Stamford Bridge earlier in the season. I think City had a goal ruled out for offside, something to do with VAR. Something happened in the game, but they didn't sulk. And I remember then for the next 10, 15 minutes, Manchester City were insatiable. They were literally, they took over the game. They changed the way that they played, and they put Chelsea to the sword. And that's what you got to do. You got to overcome these disappointments. And instead of using them as an excuse, you've got to let them empower you and push you on and motivate you, haven't you?
Yeah. Think back to the Fulham match where Fred was taken down in the box about 10 minutes into the match, and it was a clear penalty. That was a clear-cut penalty that somehow they didn't even look at. That was a disgrace. But what did the writers, even the cynical ones, were tweeting out right away, like, that's a clear-cut pen, but like that's not an excuse if United don't win this game. There's 80 minutes to go. United have time. They should win this game. And they went out and they won it. They could have won it more comfortably, but they went out and they won it. If this happened in the 89th minute, I completely agree with this comment from NZ. I think for the greater good of the game going forward, we need to hear the conversation between VAR and the ref, make it transparent, allow us to try to understand the rationale to decisions. You are not talking about football here. You are talking about any sport that uses video replay. This should be a no-brainer.
The only thing I will say on this is I don't think that this is something that will happen, though, Paulie, unless we maybe respect officials a bit more. I think they are a bit worried about the language from the outside noise that may be picked up and everything around that. I do think there's a concern there, and that is on players and staff to obviously change their behavior.
We should be respecting officials more anyway. I am not opposed to you don't have to show it live. You can release it, you can release the first half audio at halftime. You can release the second half audio at full time. Yeah. But there should be something there that we understand the rationale. In the NHL, before the Winter Classic, the outdoor game on New Year's Day, HBO used to do a show 24/7 where they would go behind the scenes with the two teams that are playing, and they'd give you a lot of access for a month. And when there were video replay decisions, they would do a segment where they'd be like, the referee gets on the phone with the NHL War Room in Toronto, and they'd have a camera in Toronto, and they'd show you that side, and you'd actually be able to see how it is, like where they have someone who's, they assign people, your job is to watch this game tonight. Your job is to watch. But then they have the managers oversee, and the manager comes over and he goes, oh, we have a tough decision here. And he goes, here's what I see. What do you see? What was the call on the ice? I don't think we have enough to overturn it. So I would, my recommendation is you stick with it, but you hear the entire conversation.
Yeah. The other thing about playing recordings as well, Paulie, is that they can be edited for TV. So if there is any bad language in there, that can be
the cynical view is they could be edited to protect them also, but I don't think that would happen. Like there are people out there that could tell you if this was edited or doctored or not.
Okay, Paulie. Well, look, we had loads to talk about on this show today, Paulie, but look, we can't get through it all. But the beauty of it is it's United Happy Hour. So, look, we do two of these a season. I'm going to say two a season. We do much more. We do two of these a week, Paulie, and we've got loads to talk about, and we'll carry it over to Thursday's conversation. We've got things to talk about Paul Pogba.
He's staying.
This is Manchester United. This is Manchester United. Another 48 hours, Paulie. I'm sure something else will come up in that time. Well, there is a game.
He's already tweeting saying, "Oh, Jadon Sancho, we're finally on the same team. Come on, bring it on. Let's do this. I am ready to get hurt again." Here's your teaser, though. As Aditya asked, what do you think of Andy Mitten saying he feels Pogba will stay? We'll lead off the show with this on Thursday. Your teaser is, I never thought he was going to leave because nobody else could sign him.
Well, you have been consistent in that view. And I don't know whether Paul Pogba, quickly, Paulie, I don't know whether he's saying we're eventually on the same team is a hint to the future or a dig at the past, Paulie. But anyway, we'll chat about that on Thursday as well. Until then, everybody, take care. Have a great couple of days. Hopefully United get the win tomorrow night. Crystal Palace, it might not seem the biggest game in this block of three that we're coming up, but I think it's a real crucial game for United tomorrow night.
I saw some tweet that yesterday that was Roy Hodgson, I guess, speaking, and he said, getting this game thrusted upon us in the middle of March because I believe it's supposed to be later, but United are in the FA Cup, so that's where this game is. And he was like, we're not too happy about that because apparently they have a lot of players out for COVID or for other reasons. And all I read from that was United are not going to win this game. I was like, Crystal Palace have so many players out for COVID. That can't be good.
Yeah, and Roy Hodgson complaining about it means that he's probably delighted about it.
Exactly.
Anyway, guys, take care, and we will talk to you on Thursday when we have the next United Happy Hour.